Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatarashta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatarashta Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 2, Chapter 1, text number 1. So there is an invocation text, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, that is on the board. We'll cover that as well, because there is a purport by Prabhupada. So we'll cover both, and we'll try to cover both. So what we'll do is, we'll go on translation and purport for invocation, and then we'll quickly do the 3 times thing for the text number 1, and from that we can go on. So, translation. O my Lord, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. Vasudeva means to Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Since by chanting the name of Krishna, Vasudeva, one can achieve all the good results of charity, austerity, and penances, it is to be understood that by the chanting of this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, the author or the speaker or any one of the readers of Srimad Bhagavatam is offering respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasure. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the principles of creation are described, and thus the first canto may be called creation. Similarly, in the second canto, the post-creation cosmic manifestation is described. The different planetary systems are described in the second canto as different parts of the universal body of the Lord. For this reason, the second canto may be called the cosmic manifestation. There are 10 chapters in the second canto, and in these 10 chapters, the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam and the different symptoms of this purpose are narrated. The first chapter describes the glories of chanting, and it hints at the process by which the neophyte devotees may perform meditation on the universal form of the Lord. In the first verse, Sukadev Goswami replies to the question of Maharaj Parikshit, who asked him about one's duty at the point of death. Maharaj Parikshit was glad to receive Sukadev Goswami, and he was proud of being a descendant of Arjuna, the intimate friend of Krishna. Personally, he was very humble and meek, but he expressed his gladness that Lord Krishna was very kind to his grandfathers. The son of Pandu, especially his own grandfather Arjuna, and because Lord Krishna was always pleased with Maharaj Parikshit's family at the verge of Maharaj Parikshit's death, Sukadev Goswami was sent to help him in the process of self-realization. Maharaj Parikshit was a devotee of Lord Krishna from his childhood, so he had natural affection for Krishna. Sukadev Goswami could understand his devotion. Therefore, he welcomed the question about the king's duty. Because the king hinted that worship of Lord Krishna is the ultimate function of every living entity, Sukadev Goswami welcomed the suggestion and said, "Because you have raised question about Krishna, your question is most glorious." The translation of the first verse is as follows. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurvai Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I was just thinking we'll just cover the text number 1 as well while we're doing it. So, Shri Shuka Uvacha Varyani Shate Prashna Krito Loka Hitam Nirpa Atma Ved Samatha Pumsam Shrotavyadishu Ya Praha Shrotavyadishu Ya Para Varyani Sate Prashna Krito Loka Hitam Ripa Atmaved Samatha Pumsam Shrotavyadishu Ya Para Varyani Sate Prashna Krito Loka Hitam Nirpa Atmaved Samatha Pumsam Shrotavyadishu Ya Para Varyani Sate Prashna Krito Loka Hitam Nirpa Atma Ved Samatha Pumsam Atma Ved Samatha Pumsam Shrotavyadishu Ya Para. Oh, this again. Anyone else would like to try? All right. So word for word. Shri Shuka Vacha. Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Varyan, glorious, Esaha, this, Te, your, Prashna, question, Kritaha, made by you, Loka Hitam, beneficial for all men, Nripa, O king, Atmavet, transcendentalist, Samataha, approved, Pumsam, of all men, Shrotavyadishu, in all kinds of hearing, Yaha, what is, Paraha, the supreme, Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, "My dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists." Purport. Even the very question is so nice that it is the best subject matter for hearing. Simply by such questioning and hearing, one can achieve the highest perfectional stage of life. Because Lord Krishna is the original Supreme Person, any question about Him is original and perfect. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that the highest perfection of life is to achieve the transcendental loving service of Krishna. Because question and answers about Krishna elevate one to that transcendental position, the questions of Maharaj Parikshit about Krishna philosophy are greatly glorified. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to absorb his mind completely in Krishna, and such absorption can be effected simply by hearing about the uncommon activities of Krishna. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita it is stated that simply by understanding the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna's appearance, disappearance and activities, one can immediately return home back to Godhead and never come back to this miserable condition of material existence. It is very auspicious, therefore, to hear always about Krishna. So Maharaj Parikshit requested Sukadev Goswami to narrate the activities of Krishna so that he could engage his mind in Krishna. The activities of Krishna are non-different from Krishna himself. As long as one is engaged in hearing such transcendental activities of Krishna, he remains aloof from the conditional life of material existence. The topics of Lord Krishna are so auspicious that they purify the speaker, the hearer, and the inquirer. They are compared to the Ganges water which flow from the toe of Lord Krishna. Wherever the Ganges water go, they purify the land and the person who bathes in them. Similarly, Krishna Katha, or the topics of Krishna, are so pure that whenever they are spoken, the place, the hearer, the inquirer, the speaker, and all concerned become purified. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming for the Bhagavatam class this morning. So, it's a very beautiful time to recite Bhagavatam because we're starting a new canto. It's like a new beginning for the second canto. So, as we know this story, just to do a little recap, Prabhupada has given the recap in the invocation and the expectation from the second canto. So, Maharaj Parikshit has received Shukadev Goswami because he has only got 7 more days to live. So he wants to use all that time very wisely. An intelligent person knows how to use his last few moments so that he can plan what comes next after death. So Maharaj Parikshit, is being a great devotee of the Lord, has been guided. Prabhupada mentions that Krishna has sent Sukadev Goswami for Maharaj Parikshit to help him come back home, back to Godhead, to realize, even though if he wasn't there, Sukadev Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit is such a great soul, he will still go back to home, back to Godhead. But the only reason this is happening is to let us know what is the purpose of life, If the reading Srimad Bhagavatam is very important. Listening to Srimad Bhagavatam is very important. Why is that? So that we can come home back to Godhead. Because that is the only way we can develop love for Krishna, the ultimate goal. That is the highest goal, the highest purpose, hearing Krishna Katha. It's actually a very funny moment yesterday in book distribution. I was speaking to this guy and he was telling me that Kobe Bryant, one of the best basketball players, have recently passed, left his body in a sudden accident. And he was like one of the greatest personalities in the whole world, And it was a sudden accident. He was in a helicopter and the helicopter crashed and he died with his young daughter. So it was like a great sad moment for the whole world, and everyone is in grief and everyone's just like, very upset that how can that happen, And I was wondering, and everyone's like saying rest in peace. I was kind of like focusing on that meaning. What does that mean? Rest in peace, Unless you have the knowledge of the soul, how can you be resting in peace, Like for example, like if someone says rest in peace, they definitely don't mean that to the body. Because, for example, in the crash, the body's gone. It's destroyed. There is no body. So what are we saying rest in peace to? Are we saying rest in peace the body, which is not even there anymore? No. Any intelligent person can understand rest in peace means the soul of that person who has left the body. That needs to be resting in peace. But how is it going to be resting in peace if all we have done is sinful activities in life? If we don't have any knowledge about the soul and we don't accept that there is an existence of soul, then what's the point of even saying words like that? So this actually got me thinking, like how our knowledge is very minimum in the material world. Everything is very small. Like our intelligence is very small, our knowledge is very small, because we have no knowledge about the soul. It's not being taught. This supreme education is not being taught in college, school, university, anywhere. No one even cares about the soul, because they only want to please the body. They only want to do anything that's the part of sense gratification, So it becomes very difficult. It becomes very uneasy for a person to realize what's life really worth, What's the point of having a life? What are you going to do about it, If you don't have any knowledge of the soul, what comes next? As I often tell people on my preaching classes, that life is not meant for enjoyment, it's meant for enlightenment, And that's a very important point. Because if we only live our life just to enjoy the senses, we are none different from animals. Even animals do that, right? They live every single second just to enjoy the senses. And sense gratification is the only goal for an animal. But for humans, we have this gift, We live in this society where we're trying not to be humans. Well, we're trying not to be animals. But instead, we are becoming non-human. The way we are living, the way we are doing things is very unhuman. I remember I was in New Zealand and I was distributing books there. And I met this person on the street and he told me, "You live in Sydney? Oh, I feel so bad, because of the bushfires. 1 million animals have died." I'm like, yeah, it's sad. But then I looked at his hand and he was carrying a bag of KFC. And I'm like, what's the point of saying that when you are going to eat an animal? What about the 1 million animals that are being died because you are eating them? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. An intelligent person does not grieve for dead animals, 1 million dead animals that are died, while you're still eating an animal yourself. It's just not very intelligent. It's a horrible thing to do. That shows the duplicity. That shows the hypocrisy of this current material world that we live in, And he's not saying, he's just feeling grief. Maybe he's feeling grief because of social media, because everyone's putting that up and he thinks, oh, maybe I should feel grief as well, That's a late emotion. That's not a natural emotion, So that's why Bhagavatam is very important, reading Bhagavatam. So we know that in the first canto, there's a beautiful text that we should read Bhagavatam. We should attend the Bhagavatam class every morning. What is the verse? Does anyone remember the verse? That we should, Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya. Yeah. So we should remember that verse, because remembering and attending Bhagavatam Katha, Krishna Katha, is very purifying. Because Krishna's name is awesome, If you hear that name constantly, there is no problem. Like as Vijay Prabhu was saying yesterday, no worries, mate, When you hear about Krishna, there is no worries, mate. Everything is good, But if you say that in the material world, like I met this guy, on books distribution, I think it was yesterday as well. He was saying, I don't want this book. I'm like, but it's going to help you, He said, I'm dealing with so much anxiety, but I don't want it. I'm all good, You're not all good. If you were all good, you will feel all good, But you're not feeling all good. You're just feeling all bad. So you should just take that book. This book will really help you, make yourself feel enlightened, which is the highest purpose of life. So this is a very beautiful chapter, the first step in God realization. Does anyone know what is the first step in God realization? What is the first step in God realization? The first step in God realization is inquiring. Inquiring the right questions. Asking the right questions and learning the right answers. So that's what Maharaj Parikshit is doing. He has inquired the right questions. What's the duty of a person at the time of death? That is the highest question. That is the right question. So inquiring is very important, In today's time, we can see that. No one is basically inquiring about life. They just go to work, come back, have their meal, have illicit activities, go to sleep, wake up, do the same thing over and over again. And that's what Sukadev Goswami will reply in the future verses that is going to happen. He says that major people spend their time just in daily mundane activities. They have no time to inquire or they don't just want to inquire anything about that is higher purpose, because who cares about the higher purpose, We just focus on the current material, what we can see, Like I met an atheist guy once in my experience, and that's probably when I made up this argument in my head. So I was meeting this atheist guy, and he was saying, there is no God, Like, you guys must be very stupid to believe there is some higher being, I'm like, okay, do you have any explanation to prove that there is no God? He said, well, if I tell you there is a flying being in Mars, how can you believe that? I'm like, well, how can you not believe that? If I tell you there is a flying being in Mars, how do you not believe that? What's your verification for that? He's like, it's common sense, You cannot, there's definitely nothing there. I'm like, how do you know that, So I gave him an example. Suppose, I just asked him, have you ever been to Antarctica? He said, no. And I'm like, how do you know that there's Antarctica if you've never been there? Like, what's the proof you have? And the first argument he uses is he used all his brain to use that argument. Because I have seen it in photos. I know there's right there, I'm like, well, I have seen God in photos. I can show you there is God. So why wouldn't you believe me that there is God? If I can show you the photos of God, based on your argument, based on your logic, if I show you the photos of God, would you believe there is God? Just like you believe Antarctica there is. So like, no. Like, I know people who've been there. I know people who have seen Antarctica. I'm like, I know people who have seen God. If I introduce you to those people, would you still believe there is God, or would you still have the same argument? So he's just like, oh, no. He just gave up and he just walked off, So there's no very strong argument. Prabhupada used to do that all the time. Vijay Prabhu was sharing the story, right? Prabhupada would tell, bring any atheist guy, anyone, any single guy, I'll just destroy him right there, in the single moment, I'll destroy them. Because there is no strong argument that there is no God, So we should understand, it's a process, Our Krishna consciousness movement is not any ordinary Hindu religious cult where you can go to temple, ask for material benedictions, try to get more money, or a happy wife, or a beautiful husband, or whatever, material goals. This is not purpose of ISKCON. This is not why Prabhupada set up ISKCON, is so that you can come to Krishna and ask for material gains. Well, you can do that, it's your call, but it's not recommended. The goal of setting up Prabhupada's ISKCON is so that we all can develop the love of God, which is currently missing in the society. On Saturday, I was distributing books in Bondi, and there was some Christian guys who just roam around Bondi area, Bondi Junction, to preach. And I met those guys quite a lot of time, and one of them was like kind of speaks to me every time he stops, So he was just like trying to speak to me, and I was like, hey, how you doing? Just trying to give him friendship, just trying to be in good network with even the other people of other sects. So I was just showing him Bhagavad Gita, and he got like, you always look so happy, You're doing such a hard job, so he's on the street stopping people. Like, he actually saw me one day when he was walking past, and I was trying to stop this guy, and he was just like swearing at me, and I was like giving him a smile. And this guy was like, what's he doing, Like, how is he like so relaxed at this time where no one could really, he cannot do that. And I asked him, like, we had this similar story about Christianity that people don't follow the message of Jesus Christ properly. So he believed that. He said, that's very true. No one really follows. So we try to do that. And so he took a Bhagavad Gita. And he was like very happy to receive that book. I told him, give it a read, You see me all the time. If you don't like it, you can bring it back, But give it a go. The only purpose of any religion is to have the love of God. If you don't have the love of God, it becomes very difficult to live life. How can you have a relationship with someone if you don't have love of God, Like, you can't have a relationship with the person unless you don't have the love for that person. So that's why Prabhupada has given us this beautiful philosophy. and has saved so many souls around the world, developed that love of God. Like, I remember the book I really like reading and sharing about is Salted Bread. It's a very famous book written by a Soviet Union devotee who was under a lot of KGB attacks. He was in prison. He was like very much tortured. He was like going through a rough time. He was very new devotee. Like, he was practicing for a few weeks. He was practicing for a few weeks, and he was thrown into jail for preaching the movement. So he would come out, he would distribute books, then he'll go into jail again. Then he'll come out, he'll distribute books, he'll get beaten up and thrown into jail again. So he kept doing that. It kept on going. So one day, 2 of these devotees, or 4 or 5 devotees were like the major devotees in Armenia. They were thrown into prison. And they were like, and they turned the whole prison into devotees. That was amazing news, Everyone over there was chanting Hare Krishna in the prison at one point. And the guards were going mental. And the prisoners were just in joy, in so much ecstasy. They were using bread, pieces of bread, and they would soak it and, use it to make beads, japa beads. It was amazing time, like how devotees have done, like how they have survived. So it's a very beautiful, inspiring way to read these books, Like what Prabhupada gave us from the very beginning is a very beautiful thing, We all should relish and cherish that asset. This is the real asset, This is the highest goal. In Krishna says, Krishna's holy name is the greatest gift one can receive, We remember the story from Chaitanya Leela. One day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was Sukadev Goswami with the Brahmana. I can't remember the details. So, with the rubbish thing, it was Sukadev Goswami that put this expensive Sanatan Goswami. Yeah. So, yeah, I can't remember the details of the story. I forgot. So, well, we'll just skip that one. We'll just go to some other story. So, yeah, there was another story where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was walking past and he saw this Brahmana who was reading Bhagavad Gita upside down. We all know that story. Yeah, he's illiterate, he's an illiterate person, but he's trying to read the Bhagavad Gita upside down. He was had it other way around, Like, I can't even imagine what you're going to read when you do it upside down, Like how much you would understand, it doesn't make any sense. So, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that, and, there was many scholarly Brahmanas around, and they all were doing their things. And this Brahmana, this illiterate Brahmana was reading this book. Was he a Brahmana? He was a Brahmana? Yeah. He was a Brahmana, right? Isn't that right? Not sure. So, well, this person, he was illiterate, so he can't really read, but he was running around, scrolling through pages and looking at photos. I hope there were photos at the time. But, so he had tears flowing through his eyes, And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was watching that. He's like, what's going on? Why is he crying? He's got a Bhagavad Gita upside down and he's got tears in his eyes, This is something, I don't know what's going on, So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to him and asked, hey, what are you doing? You got the book upside down and now you got tears in your eyes. What are you trying to do? And he said that my spiritual master has instructed me to read this book even though I don't know how to read, So I'm trying and I got tears in my eyes. And that's when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that you have understood the goal of Bhagavad Gita, You have understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So we should remember that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Padma Purana actually, there is a quote, Name Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Name Chintamani Krishna. Krishna's name is like a touchstone, Anyone who chants the holy name becomes ecstatic. And that is the highest purpose of life, is to always stay in that ecstasy. But due to material contamination, many times we don't feel that ecstasy, Sometimes when we are chanting, we feel like we are thinking of something else. Has it happened to anyone, or is it just me? Yeah, yeah. Many times it happens. Actually, every day it happens, So, but every time we try to chant, our attention is not on Krishna. So it's a very, I was actually meditating on this point, how, for example, if I call, I remember speaking to one of my friends back in the day, and we would speak on phone a lot, because she was living in a different country. So we would spend a lot of time on the phone discussing and speaking to each other, and she was a complainer. She would speak for days if you just let her speak, and she'd go on for days for speaking. And some days what I do is if I don't want to speak to her, I'll put the phone on side while she's complaining about things in her life, and I'll just go for a walk. And when I'll come back, she's still speaking, So she doesn't really know if I'm listening or not. So, and I was thinking the same point can apply in our chanting, You can go on days chanting the holy name, but if the other person, if you're not paying attention to the name, that means just like Krishna is just going to put you on hold and go for a walk, Because it doesn't matter to him, Because you're not focusing on Krishna, you're not attentive on Krishna's holy name. So this doesn't make any sense. You can chant the holy name as much as you like, but if you're not really attentive in doing that, the benefits will be really less. It's not the highest goal. So we should aspire for something greater. I try to aspire as much as possible, get like in the right mood and set up my mind and things accordingly. But, again, mind is very disturbed. So it's a constant practice, It's a lifetime, it's a lifelong activity. We have to seek for perfection, just like in a mundane world, in a material world. Everyone has to start from the bottom, You have to start and make your work through higher. It takes a long time. Some people take 30 years, some takes 40 years. On a general account, in today's current society, it takes about 40 years, to be on a higher position. In a company. So it takes a lot of efforts. It takes a lot of hard work for that, You just don't sit there, do your thing, and next day you got a promotion, You got to have a very good karma to get such a thing. But it doesn't happen oftenly. We all know that. Right? You're a lawyer. You probably struggled way through, to get in there, Like 5 years over here as well. 5 years of law degree, It's a hard job, You got to put so much effort, so many exams, papers, chartered accountant, whatever, If you just have to put so much hard work in there, And when it comes to chanting, we don't really care that much. We say like, we just got to do, 16 rounds. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, So that's how we really operate. That's not very good. If you want to have a career, the highest career is Krishna consciousness in life, And if you want to have the highest career, you got to work equally hard, Why spend so much energy in the material world, which is temporary? And not spend something that is an internal, so much energy, So we should remember that. But because it's a voluntary activity, so people sometimes takes it easy. That's the thing that I realize sometimes, Because it's a voluntary process, You can you're not being forced, Like in material world, if you don't work hard, you'll be left behind, And in Krishna consciousness, there is no diminution, there is no loss, Wherever you stop, you continue. So, but the intelligent person does not want to do that. He does not want to keep coming back in this material world and wait for an opportunity to go back. An intelligent person knows this is a miserable situation I am in, and I want to get out of this as soon as possible. So that's why we need to work on our chanting, because chanting is the greatest asset. Chanting the holy name is the only means of connecting to Krishna. So we can, and also not just chanting, reading Prabhupada's books also is very essential, and doing service, because you can keep doing service as much as you like. You can be a good cook, you can cook for days, you can be a good book distributor, you can go out for days, you can do any service you like. But if you're not reading and not focusing on your sadhana, then how are you going to get motivation to keep doing that service? It doesn't work. It's like me telling you to keep working for me without getting you a pay check. No one's going to do it, Why would you work for someone if you're not getting paid? That's called slavery, right? Then you just become a slave. So that's why the motivation comes in devotional service when you know what are you doing and why are you doing it, What's the purpose behind it, You give Bhagavatam to an ordinary person, Like without Prabhupada's purports, they will space out. They will not understand the essence. They will not understand anything about Bhagavatam. Because the only way you can now understand Bhagavatam when it comes from pure devotee. When it's explained to you by the pure devotee, by the mercy of a devotee. And Prabhupada has given this mercy to spread this Krishna consciousness around the whole world, His purports have made devotees, One day I was hearing a story about how my Guru Maharaj was telling that back at the times, there was times when people would go out, and one day this devotee, I can't remember names, one day this devotee went out on the street and, chanted a verse from Bhagavad Gita, and that guy who was like on the receiving end just like crashed, and he just like ran away, and he just packed his bags and moved into the ashram, into the temple. It's not happens every time, but sometimes it happens like that, Like sometimes I might meet people on the street, they're like, wow, what is that book? it's awesome book, and like you show it to them, they're like so into it. They're like, wow, what is that? And one verse they read, they're like, this is awesome, I'm taking this. Can I get like 2 more copies for my other friends and stuff? So you meet people like that. But you also meet people on the other side who like have no interest at all, Like in today's time, we can see like when I was a kid, I hated books. I can't deal with books, Books are just like too much mental anxiety for me, I just want to go play, gonna play basketball or cricket. Why am I going to read books, Like even though it was material books, because I would read I would read these books about history books or mathematics. Mathematics was the biggest anxiety. So I'll read these books, I'm like, I'm not learning anything about me or my life, I don't see how this knowledge is going to be practical in my life, Reading about Pythagoras' theorem is not helping me advance in my life, I don't know how I'm going to make progress. Or reading about some, you add 2 chemicals together, it just doesn't make sense, How is it helping me advance in my life? How is it making my life any better? If I go running, that's actually better. That's actually helping me physically. So I would always think like that. And that's why I never had like big interest in reading books. And teachers complain, parents complain, so you just got, so much anxiety you get in the material anxiety. So, and then you read Bhagavatam, you read few pages of Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada is saying that if you don't read the books or if you don't practice Krishna consciousness, you equal as an animal. You're living like an animal and you just crash, He's like, whoa, what's that? That's blowing my mind right now, Like, so this philosophy helps us succeed in life, helps us become a better person, first of all. That's the most crucial. Like, sometimes in my preaching lectures, I tell people, keeping all the philosophies aside, put everything aside. Why should I just read Bhagavad Gita, even though I don't have nothing to do with Krishna or anything, Why should I still read it? Because it is telling me, it is showing me how I can become a better person. It tells me not to kill animals which have not done any harm to you. You just like illicitly like killing so many animals and going on and on and on in slaughterhouses. Become a better person, being compassionate. It teaches you compassion. Like how can you teach compassion, to someone? Like it doesn't work. Like there's a big research that has shown like in the Forbes magazine, like start your day with gratitude and compassion. But how do you do that? No one knows that. These things are ancient, You pay respects to the Supreme Lord. That's how you start your day, with compassion and gratitude, respecting other beings, respecting other devotees, Every morning we chant Vanchakalpa, we're respecting for forgiveness from other devotees if we have committed any offenses. So that's gratitude. That's compassion, having towards all living entities. This is the highest goal, is to start your day in a beautiful manner, Otherwise, things are very, very mundane, there is no goal in life. Like we see people all day, We see people all day with just running around, no goal in life, just like, I don't know what to do, I just got to do this because I have to do it. I have to get money, I have to feed the family, I have to do this and that, but that's, again, fruitive activity. So we should not inspire for things like that. We should inspire for something greater, something meaningful. And now we have a place, we have a set organization which can help us do that. Our ISKCON movement, please don't take it cheaply. It's very, very crucial. That's what I try to respect when I met my friends and stuff. Don't take it cheaply. Because if we start taking our Hare Krishna movement cheaply, it just becomes very dull. And as we all know, we chant and we dance and we eat. None of these 3 activities are dull. So we should engage more in that, So we should try to keep everyone enlightened and everyone enthused, by our own attitude first, so that we can have inspiration, because all we have is each other, to advance in spiritual. We can't advance in spiritual life. If I'm alone in this temple, I'm not going to make any advancement. The only way we can advance is when we are around devotees. Otherwise, things are very difficult. So we should try and remember that. And yeah, so I don't know if I got distracted from the verse, but maybe that's the essence of the verse as well. We're just trying to focus on hearing and chanting the name of the Lord. And reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita are the guidelines, It is said by the acharyas. You can try, in a way, you can try reading other books from the outside, which has got nothing to do. But then again, you got to follow the disciplic chain. Evam parampara praptam. This supreme science is received through the knowledge of disciplic succession. And we should follow that. So one's highest goal is to remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. That's the highest goal in life. So we should try and engage as much as possible in Krishna Katha or Krishna activities, Just hearing by Krishna is so purifying. Prabhupada says that Krishna is the purifying agent in everything, It's just like water is the purifying agent. Krishna is the water, taste the water. So Krishna should always be in the center of all our activities, Because then only when we can get Krishna prem or love for Krishna. So I'll end there. If anyone has any questions, comments, corrections, now is the time to speak. You have something to add, Prabhu? All right. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.